Okay, so this is a magnetron. This is the things that creates the EM waves for the max deuce or warp drive things. Um, so inside here we have a cooling coil, and the cooling coil keeps the magnetron cool. So the water runs through these coils and then goes through a large radiator rather than what it was before. So I can make this thing a lot quieter. In the coils around the magnetron, I put a epoxy that was mixed with metal particles, and the metal copper type metal particles, and the copper type metal particles helps the heat move through the epoxy more quickly into the cooling coil. Now the cooling coil is made out of aluminum, so that's why I'm using a copper flake in between the coils to allow the heat to pass through more quickly. So the reason why there is aluminum rather than copper is because the aluminum is much cheaper when it comes to radiators and stuff, and you don't want there to be an electrolysis process, which will start causing corrosion inside the pipes and gunk buildup and all that problems. Well, it just eliminates problems by having everything one type of metallic material. So the radiators are aluminum, and so is the cooling coil is also aluminum. But the aluminum coil is impregnated with a copper type epoxy, uh, homemade copper type epoxy. Just copper flakes that were mixed in with the epoxy and then impregnated into the coil, or pasted on the body of the magnetron and then pasted on the interior of the coil, and then it was shoved on. And that's how I made that. And then in the very end, I, of course, covered the coil and then cleaned it off. And that's how I ended up with it embedded in the coil like that. And yeah, so the system's pretty well set up. Next, there's this. This is a shutoff switch, and so when it gets too hot, it shuts off. Now this actually needs to be embedded on, it needs to be implanted on the magnet, and the reason why it needs to be planted on the magnets is because the magnets will get hot, and if they get too hot, they'll break, and then if they break, the magnetron is broken. So yeah, that's what needs to be changed right now, is that needs to be moved to a different proximity, a closer proximity to these magnets. And otherwise, the main part of this is done. The next step is something like a camera lens that will fit over this, and it will stop the radio waves or microwaves from coming out. It's a metal tube that fits over the top of this, and it has a glass lens on it, and the glass lens doesn't allow the vacuum to pass through. It doesn't allow any breaks in the seal of the vacuum. And then there, on the outside of the lens, there's also another seal. There are two types of seals. One is a seal in between the metal, which will not allow the microwaves to pass through and keep them isolated inside the chamber. And then another seal which keeps the air or gases from passing through, so it sustains the vacuum. So there's two types to the cover that fits over this, and then the lens cover will actually go inside fit into a tube that insert into the chamber, and then there needs to be a bolting platform for the magnetron. All right, so yeah, this is done. Well, pretty much everything that's absolutely necessary is done. And there's also going to be another thing that actually checks the heat temperature inside the radiators and stuff. So that's not really necessary, I don't think. But maybe the magnets might heat up more quickly than the cooling coils, because they're actually more towards the center. The magnets actually go more towards the center of the magnetron, which means that they might heat up more quickly than the cooling coil, and maybe the cooling coil doesn't move through the metal fast enough to keep the magnets cool. So definitely going to put some stopping stoppers on that, and stopping relays on the magnets to make sure that they will break. And there's going to be 2 magnetrons. I have this magnetron, and then I have another one that's more powerful that I should be getting pretty soon. And then it will also be modified. The reason why I'm going to have 2, specifically, if one breaks, then I have another one to be more careful with. Alright, so that's it. This is the magnetron. This is the wave inducer inside the warp drive test models.